Okay, let's do it. This is Schemeology Podcast. I'm
We're
Jared.
back, and I'm Jack.
Let's do it. This sorry for being late here. Jack was busy doing. I don't even want to know what he's doing.
I was at a dating event.
Oh my god.
I know.
Oh,
As cringe as it sounds, it is the truth.
yeah. How'd that go?
It was a lot of fun, to be honest. The whole premise is you had to bring a single female friend or a single male friend, depending on which gender you are, or
Yeah.
a single demisexual, pansexual ghost, whatever
Yeah.
fucking
Which
thing.
one were you?
I was the demisexual ghost, and as it turned out, I was the only demisexual ghost there, which is fucking wild.
Art's getting at you.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah.
Now Art knows that I'm always on time, but except, listen, Art. I actually have no good excuse for you other than I'm not on time.
That's all right, dude. That's but yeah, I with dating events, I'm always like, I don't know. Like I sometimes it's fun, but it's also like it feels like bottom of the barrel sometimes. Like whenever there's like an event, it's like
Yeah.
the best girls I know don't really go to they don't really go to things like that.
Yeah. The
Typically
thing that
just source from friends. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that was nice about this is it was a friend's apartment and the whole it was just her
Nice,
it was just
nice.
her inviting 20 of her friends and then all of them had to
Yeah.
bring 20 of their friends.
And then you
So,
guys all fucked. It sounds like an orgy setup.
it was a
Is that
German
what you were up to?
discotheque orgy. Yeah, you got it. Uh-huh.
I,
I was the camera guy though. It was weird. They all told me to stand in the corner, and they said they told me that I would get my turn, and then I never got it. But they told me it wasn't because of me.
I feel like being the camera guy genuinely is better because I can't think of something more like dehumanizing than being in like an orgy. Whenever I think of orgy, I don't think like, oh, that's great, unless it's like all girls, I guess. But if there's like an orgy, that sounds like you're like cattle. I don't know. It sounds fucking weird.
It's a lot, and it's not great if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, from
Although
your
I,
experience.
yeah, from my endless experience again at my German discotheque orgies. Yes.
Yeah. The so that leads perfectly into what we're talking about today. Joe Rogan
An authenticity.
and all the
Well, did I ever tell you about the time that I met Joe Rogan at a German orgy?
oh well, that's perfect. That's an amazing story. How'd that go?
Well, so it was interesting. He was actually at, so he was with a couple very butch but attractive ladies who were MMA fighters.
Yeah, of
And they
course.
kicked my ass in a dark alley room.
Yeah,
But
that
hey,
was a fetish thing, right?
it was a fetish thing, which it often
Yeah,
is in Germany. Dude, why are the
yeah.
Germans so into fetishes?
I think it's like Weimar Republic, like legitimately this stuff I was talking about. I think they're still like that's still part of their culture. They
Yeah,
were one of the first. Berlin was one of the first cities to be like have a sexual revolution.
I think also when like a society collapses so hard, and they collapsed multiple times in a row. They collapsed after World War One, then they
Yeah,
collapsed again after World War Two. Won't have to get into the events there,
yeah. We'll have a stream on that.
dude.
Okay. Just want to say it didn't happen.
It
No,
didn't
just
happen. It would be amazing if we were a Nazi apologist. Like 13 episodes into this, we come in and be like, "Listen, Germany did nothing wrong."
yeah. Well, I just come in straight up. I'm like, listen, guys. I know you guys like tech and you like schemeology and all that, but Hitler's the bro. And then I just go on like a fucking hour long rant on it.
You
I feel
start
like
speaking German like in and out.
I feel like the vibe that I bring, some people wouldn't be that surprised. Like,
The, the only black Nazi in Germany.
yeah, I feel like that's cool though, being a black Nazi. I feel like that's Kanye's shtick, right?
That is Kanye's shtick right now. He's kind of leaning into the whole black Nazi thing more than anyone.
By the way, I'm not actually a Nazi. I feel like I have to be clear with stuff like that.
I really hope that you don't have to, but it's funny that you think you do.
because I just feel like, especially with tech people, there's like very little nuance sometimes. Like they need things to be like 100. It's like you need to be very direct.
You do. I mean, with that was kind of what I was even dealing with tonight. Was like just people being, because it was all like tech friends for the most part,
Yeah,
hosting a party full of like, it was an eccentric bunch, to be
they're all
honest.
tech friends.
Oh yeah, my friend who is hosting it runs Techstars New York.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
is that so? How do you feel about that? You're gonna date a tech girl,
No, probably not. I haven't ever really dated a tech girl.
right?
No, I've never dated a tech girl, to be honest.
Why not?
It's never happened.
Right? I mean, is
There's
there any
not.
specific reason? I'm putting you on the spot here.
All right. So if we're gonna be honest, I think
We have to. We're talking about authenticity today.
if we think about like the majority of people who get into tech,
Yeah.
and I don't want to break anyone's psyche right now, but
Yeah.
there aren't that many women in tech compared to men. Not even getting into why, but that's just
Really?
a yeah. And everyone's like, listen, how come you don't have transgender coders on your team?
Yeah.
Why don't you have women coders? Like, why don't you have 50% women coders? It's like my brother James. He went to he was electrical engineer. In his class there was 99 other engineers. Guess how many women were in his class?
Like two.
There was two.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was two.
Yeah. I did like a couple CS courses and it was like that. It
Yeah.
was like there's one or two. The guys were like groveling over them. No, and I'm not like actually like I'm just kind of being a dick about it. I'm not actually like dating a girl in tech isn't something I don't know. That's nothing I really think about. But
Yeah, I don't think about dating. I just want to date good people with
exactly.
similar morals who are also ambitious, working on cool stuff. And that could be in any regard.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan.
And when on that note, I just want to date Joe Rogan. That's actually what I'm trying to get at here.
Honestly, like when I think about Joe Rogan and like, because there's this whole thing where like girls will try to vet you based on whether they'll like ask you, "Oh, do you listen to Joe Rogan?" You know, I don't know if that's ever happened to you. Like they'll be like, "Oh, like," because I feel like there's this vibe ever since he hit the scene. There's this vibe, the whole like toxic masculinity thing, ethos, like whatever that is. People will like label him as that or as like the first entry to that world, but the reality is there's like almost nothing about him that's like has anything to do with like what people perceive as being toxically masculine or whatever that is, other than
Yeah,
like fighting, I guess. Like I honestly don't like, he's actually not like, he's a pretty liberal guy. Hey,
yeah,
what's up, Omar?
it's happening. And not only is he liberal, but like he has a lot of female guests and has clearly has a lot of like strong, healthy female relationships and female friends and he's
He's got daughters.
seems like he's a normal dude with healthy attachments to women. And he doesn't say anything that's like particularly anti-women, anti-feminists. And from honestly what I've heard a lot of him, you might even be able to argue that in some ways he is a feminist, you know,
Yeah,
from
he
like the
has some feminist
classical
leanings. Yeah,
definition.
definitely. And it's so funny that there's like this culture around seeing whatever that it's like people that are like asserting themselves, because he is like asserting himself as masculine, like his image. And like I feel like there is this like, and for whatever reason, our modern culture, when people do that, there is this kind of like knee jerk reaction of like, oh, like, and maybe it's just natural and just the way people evolved, but it's like to poke at him a bit. And I think that's where a lot of like because he's such a controversial figure, which is so odd, I think.
Well, I think it's funny because when you look at Joe Rogan, like maybe what we do is we start with how did Joe Rogan become what he is
Yeah.
today, right? So Joe Rogan had his acting days. Then he was always a stand-up comedian. That was like his first and foremost thing that he cared the most about. So he was a stand-up comic who really worked hard at that and started getting road gigs and did all the normal stand-up comic path. And then in like 2008 or 9, he started the Joe Rogan Experience and started podcasting and became, and if you go back to early Joe Rogan, it was him getting stoned with his buddies and being like literally, they're being complete fucking goofballs. Yeah. And then eventually he would just have on people he met through, obviously at that point wasn't super famous, but was at least relevant enough, like call it D tier fame, to meet interesting people who also had some notoriety. And he would just invite them on the pod and be like alien guys. Yeah. It would be like, the Randall Carlsons of the world, the people like weird, like whatever sort of like geology guys.
Yeah.
And then
the science, also like, and the other on the flip side, his like comedy career is kind of like from just an outsider looking back. I mean, I wasn't around obviously, but like when he was like developing, it was like kind of like he was this like TV guy getting into comedy, and then the Mencia thing happens. I don't know, right. And he confronts this guy who's been bullying these comics, who like has been stealing jokes, and he gets a ton of respect. And that's something where you see like now he's become essentially this modern day David Letterman type figure, but through his own medium. And it's like, as much as like I'll critique him on certain things, I got to give him respect for that, to be honest. Like, that's crazy to like have your own brand and be authentic and get to a certain point where you're literally like the new David Letterman, like on your own platform. That's pretty crazy.
That's crazy. And Carlos Mencia at the time was one of the most famous comedians in America. Like that was the reason he was giving Carlos Mencia so much shit, because Carlos was stealing jokes from less famous, less notable comedians. But Carlos, I mean, do you remember, like, especially when we were growing up as kids, it was Carlos Mencia was literally one of the biggest guys.
He was, yeah.
And when Joe Rogan went up to him and had that whole thing happen, he got banned from the Comedy Cellar, which was like the comedy club in LA and one of the biggest comedy clubs in the United States.
Right.
And so then he kind of just had to lean into the podcast more. That's actually one of the catalysts for his podcast, where he was already doing it regularly, and Joe Rogan does everything regularly because the guy wakes up at like 8 a.m., fucking does a cold bath, works out for 4 hours, and then writes comedy. Dude, it's crazy. Even listening to him, like, you listen to the guy, like, even myself, like, I struggle with weed. I love that. That's my vice. I prefer it over drinking, but it's not good for discipline. It's objectively bad. And if you,
stay away.
of course, but if you could be someone who's like, I only smoke a joint late at night when I write comedy for 3 hours, and that's how Joe Rogan's doing it. And he clearly is writing comedy for 3 hours because he's had like 15 specials.
Yeah, and there's this whole like part about him where his discipline, he kind of shows. Chris Hardwick's another person like this. I don't know if you're aware of him, the Nerdist guy. They grinded the fuck out of the entertainment, and they like actually hustled the fuck out of it. And like, objectively, they're not the most skilled guys, like either of them. I'm not dissing them. I'm positive Joe Rogan would say he's not the most skilled comedian because he's friends with Dave Chappelle. But like, they're just being real. I mean. But like I'm sure he thinks he's good. Like, I'm not saying that.
And he is good objectively.
Yeah, no, he is objectively like a good comedian. Yeah. Like his joke about the Kardashians is like, it was always solid. But I mean, obviously I think Dave Chappelle is fucking funnier. But
really? Dave Chappelle's funnier? What are you going to tell me that like, fucking Louis C.K. is funnier? I mean, come on. It's like
the point of what I'm saying is like the discipline, I'm guessing he's so tied to that. It's just because he learned like the way I can get an edge is by just like outworking these motherfuckers. And I do respect that. And people that like have that grind is like, I can always see it. I can always see the people that outworked.
Yeah, and part of the discipline, which is so interesting with like a character like Rogan, is that part of his discipline was clearly emotional as well, where he was he has been himself for now 12 years publicly. You go
Yeah.
back and watch him. He was maybe a less matured, less evolved version of himself, but he was always 100% authentic. And he
Yeah.
said dumb shit along the way. But part of the authentic path, the hero's journey, if you will, is
Yeah.
saying shit and doing shit that's maybe not even maybe it's not even fully what you believe, but it's you figuring out yourself in an authentic way. And that's why people listen to him, because he's relatable. He admits when he's wrong. He's the first person
Yeah.
to go, I'm a dumbass and I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, I always say with Joe Rogan, how many times have you heard a politician go, actually, can someone fact check me on that? How many times have our politicians led us literally into wars and then never admitted the fact that we went into war for no good reason? You know?
Yeah. And I love that, like, it's that like flow of just saying what you think. As a comedian, Owen Benjamin said, "I might be wrong, but I'm not lying." That's his phrase, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a bit of a falling out with Rogan, but like that's their beef, I guess. But like, I just love that like phrase of like, it's like I might be wrong, but I'm not lying, because it's like at the end of the day, if you're in public saying the things you think, there's so many. It's like there's a lot of claims and there's so much like fire you can get, but like it's so refreshing to like hear people just be honest and just say what they think, even if it's not like your particular flavor. Because like for someone like Joe Rogan, I see it and it's like I'm sure tons of people like through the years like, oh Joe, I wish you would talk about this, or we should talk about this, and it's like it's like I'm just gonna fucking talk what I say when I want to say, and I'm sure he's had to make that decision like a ton.
Yeah, dude. And it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've put on the Joe Rogan Experience and I've turned it off, you know? And not in a bad way, but like he's just not talking about, or he's talking about something I don't care about. He's talking to someone I don't like or don't care about, but he's doing it. And it's like, I'm not going to go so far to be like, oh, he sucks now. It's like, he does episodes and has interviews that I love. And then he has interviews where I go, I hate this interview. And I don't, and newsflash, I don't like Joe Rogan in the interview. I think Joe Rogan says something dumb.
Yeah,
But it doesn't matter. It's not about me. He's going and doing his own thing. I'm choosing to listen.
and we could choose not to listen too. That's the thing with like the authentic. Like you want more people to be authentic, even if they kind of suck. Or if you think they suck from your perspective, like you should still like that they're being honest, because people they'll go down different rabbit holes you don't like. And I think it's a part of how we're all maturing with the internet is we have to like reconcile with the fact that like the way we engage, we have to be detached. Our egos need to be detached with the way we engage with entertainment.
Well, I think the and there is this whole thing. I think a lot of people think that Joe Rogan is overrated, and there's a really strong argument to be made on all fronts, right? Because everything is dependent on how you're
Yeah,
valuing or judging someone. Like, what are your criteria for rating someone? But the reason that Joe Rogan is so popular is because he's way more authentic and honest than most of the people that you still like. Most comedians, most public figures, most people that talk on the internet are not fully authentic to themselves all the time. Joe Rogan has one of the few people who actually might be. And that may be not someone that you like. It's not even someone
yeah,
that I like all the time. But he is someone that seems to be fully authentic to himself, and not, he doesn't seem like he's subjecting his opinion or changing his opinion for anyone else. And that's the reason,
yeah.
the core reason why he's so popular, because authentic,
Which
yeah,
Yeah, well, real quick, which could be to his detriment, because I've
totally.
definitely seen him like one of the reasons why I stopped watching Joe is he just like he'd have like Bernie Sanders on and some like other political person on, and he'd be like he flows very in the direction of whoever he's talking about, and sometimes it's hard to like listen to. But also maybe that's a part of my own like problem. Maybe that I was attaching my ego to it to some extent, because it's like I don't need him to like have a certain opinion. But it's also like I think that. But the reality is, to point what you're saying is he's being like he honestly is floaty. Like he's clearly a floaty guy. I like when it comes to his like opinions and stuff like that.
Floaty, you mean that he's changing his opinion?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, but I think it's genuine. Like, I think I'm not saying he's like lying or disingenuous. I think it's just like when he has. I think when he has someone on it, they. And I don't know if he still does it. I don't still watch it, but they definitely like influence him in the moment a bit. Um,
I get that. In fairness, though, I do that too. Like it's almost
Everyone
like
probably does it to an
it's
extent.
it's kind of like I always wondered, and that's actually an interesting. I wonder if he's doing it because he's suspending disbelief. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
interesting.
when you have the opportunity, and I think that this is also kind of maybe this is what's interesting about it, and I don't know if this
Hmm.
is even what he's doing, but it's something that I do when I talk to people, which is like when I'm talking to someone who has a radically different opinion than me, I could become oppositional. But
Hmm.
oftentimes I don't care enough to become oppositional, and I also don't like confrontation that much. So what I'll choose to do is I'll go along with them. Like I'll let them talk and I'll ask them questions, and I won't
Yeah,
necessarily agree with them, but like I choose to ask them questions and I choose to see their side of things because it furthers the conversation to a point where I gather more information than if I otherwise stated my oppositional opinion in the beginning. So you get way more out of the interview if
yeah,
you like see where people are coming from than if you start at the beginning and go, "Oh, I totally disagree. You're totally fucking wrong."
yeah. I know what
You're
you're saying.
never going to go deeper. But if you go, "That's interesting. Why do you believe that?"
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. Street comp. I have done text to audio. Uh, but I appreciate it. But yeah, no. I There is this thing where it's like you're interviewing someone. You don't want to be like super adversarial. Um, but also there's this like the thing is at the end of the day it's like you can just not even watch when you don't like something, and I think that's the beautiful thing with the authenticity piece is that if we have actual more authentic voices on the internet, we're gonna like you I think it's gonna give people more fucking agency, or at least it's like gonna train people to have more agency, because it's like you can't like change your content. You just choose to fucking listen to it or not.
Also, I would encourage everyone who if you see Jared, me, or anyone else on the internet say something or do something that you don't like, you need to ask yourself, why do you want us to change?
Right?
If
Yeah.
you ever want someone else to change, that's almost 100% of the time a projection of your own self-interest and your own self-belief.
Unless
Your
they're like beating the shit out of you.
Exactly. Unless it's something extreme. But if someone's saying
Yeah.
something you don't like, why do you want them to say something differently?
Sticks and stones may break my
Break my bones,
bones.
but words will never hurt me.
Everyone forgot that in 2015, and then the world fucking went crazy. We all knew it when we grew up. Sticks and stones, and then all of a sudden the world went crazy.
I mean, how often? Remember, this is a crazy. Remember. I remember this happening in my household. My parents would be like, "Hey, we're gonna have Sam and Larissa over for dinner. No one talk about politics. They might be why because they're Republicans and we're not." And my parents were like, "We disagree with them on some things, but they're great people, and we like them, and we want
Yeah.
to have a nice dinner with our families. They've got a good family. We've shared values, we've shared interests, and there's no reason that we have to fight over dumb politics
Yeah.
tonight. There's no point. So
Dude,
why?"
I got a whole philosophical fucking discussion about this. But
Oh,
like, do
let's
you
get
want to
into
get
it.
into it? Because
Yes.
like there's so much to unpack with that. I mean, let me know what you think about this, but it's like so like I look at a lot of things through the lens of like history and philosophy. And the reality is a part of the reason why we're doing it more, in my this all alleged in my opinion, my theories. And you can and other people can have push back. We've been super like there's this concept of alienation that Hegel talked about, and eventually another guy who invented communism. But we don't have to talk about that. But Hegel talked this idea of alienation. It's essentially this idea where there's this crazy trauma from not from essentially being homeless, not like literally, but psychologically,
Mm.
and developing in a way where you don't have you don't mentally have a home. And when people, and the idea is, as we start getting societies and you become a cog essentially. You don't you're fully, there's this crazy trauma when you grow up and you get fully detached from that mentality. I think when people are arguing about politics, they're genuinely arguing with, like, it feels like they're gonna die.
Yeah.
It feels like they're having like a true death, like they're fully alienated socially. Whether or not you have buddies that you get drunk with after work, it's like it's more about what dictates your behaviors. You have to fucking go to your cog job or else you'll die. That's like the way you think. And I think the more we get into that mentality, the more it's like, oh, if we have like capitalism versus socialism, like that's actually gonna fucking kill me. Like if
Mm.
this debate. And I think that like the more our society kind of, people consent to this social construct, the more we're in this, like, we're gonna get further and further. Plus, with the media nonsense, we're gonna get further and further in this mentality where we can't debate about topics without thinking like it's a struggle to death, truly. And I think it's
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I want to remind everyone that you don't hunt your own food. You're not actually surviving on your own. So this isn't about you, and that your political ideology is not important for your survival right now. It's not. It has nothing to do with you surviving. And we get so wrapped up in whether or not, like, if I don't get an abortion law passed or an immigration law passed or whatever, like, it's really going to affect me. And the reality is it's not. It hasn't affected you. There are things that are
Yeah.
affecting you on a day-to-day basis, but almost everything that affects us is a local level. But do you ever hear anyone arguing over local politics?
No.
No. No one gives a fuck about their local
Well, no one
community.
actually cares about politics. They just care if they're gonna fucking die. People are actually very selfish typically with how they behave. It's like no one really cares. I mean, this is a super. I'm not like trying to be super cynical, but people typically don't care about the greater good. That's
Mm-hmm.
like the Leviathan. It's like they just care if daddy's gonna fucking crush them. And if you look at like the way people communicate about social issues through the lens that it's like how much you think whatever your daddy is that's going to crush you, that's how people typically draw towards left and right and center and all these things. And it's like the left people have a bit of a daddy issue, and anyone who's been promiscuous in a city knows all about that. Okay, it's a psychosexual thing. I'm just going to say it. Okay.
And then what is the rights issue? Because it's also a psychological. It's like it's more of a rebellious thing. Like it's I don't need anyone. I'm free.
Yeah,
I'm fully independent, which is another thing.
it's
It's
that
like
control. Yeah.
which is exactly, which is like you control your own life. You are the captain of your own journey, whatever it is. And the reality with that side is the same. It's bred from the same cloth, which is like
Yeah.
we talked about this earlier in the week, which is everyone is either agreeing with their parents or rebelling against your parents.
A
You have those two.
100%.
That's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that it is. So if your
yeah.
parents, and same with the whole joke with Art earlier, if you're always on time, you're always going to be on time, or you're rebelling against being on time.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah,
the
yeah,
two
hundred
things,
percent.
right? So it's like you always have something that you're either fully objecting to or fully agreeing with. And
Yeah,
it almost always stems from how you were raised and the environment that you were in. And the
yeah,
same thing is true for politics.
yeah, and the whole like, dude, and by the way, all that stuff, their leanings, and I think a lot of those, the irony of all the social constructionists, like they're actually like a lot of stuff is the way we view politics. I do think is socially constructed. Um, like the reality is like this goes back to the authenticity thing. The more you fucking confront the truth in your life, whatever it is, the more you cut through the bullshit. And it's like that's why I love it's like, and people may not like it all the time because it's uncomfortable, but I like saying some things that are uncomfortable where it's like you have to confront it because
Mm-hmm.
it's the thesis. It's more Hegel, the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It's like when there's a thesis there has to be something to push back on it, and we don't actually know what the truth is. Like I have my statement and someone can have their statement. We don't know what the truth is, but the fact that two things contradict each other means there's truth somewhere. And it's like if you take in that given, then the world will be a better place if you follow through with it. We don't know what the synthesis will be. It's like I can say, oh, Joe Rogan sucks. He's destroying the world or whatever, and someone could disagree. Neither of us are wrong or right. I mean, that's a very extremist point of view, but neither of us are wrong or right. But it's like how we find the truth from that is what makes the world better. So it's like things may make you uncomfortable, but also being emotional about the truth is part of what like breaks your mind. It's part of what keeps you in this social contract.
Yeah, I always encourage people to think about like why do you feel the need to change someone else's mind?
Yeah.
Part of the reason that I like to go along with people I disagree with and like get deeper in with them and find commonalities. Like I'm always looking for a reason to agree with someone. I want to find reason to agree because
Yeah.
I can agree with almost anyone. I can agree with a lot of people who have abhorrent beliefs because I can agree with them about health. I can agree with them about discipline or fitness or objectivity or comedy. There's something common between us. And I
Yeah.
find it much more interesting to find the commonalities with people because someone else's way of being and thinking is not an insult to my own. It's not an attack on my own belief. And if they believe something different than me, I can talk to them about it for hours. And at the end of it, I don't go, oh, fuck, I can't believe they think that. I go, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm going to go to bed.
Oh, Maliki does have a good point here where he's saying the corruption of politics kills people. If they keep arguing about politics, about abortion, then you miss other things in happening. So there is like a valid point there where, and this is a part of, in my opinion, social control of of media, where I do think politics, the issues do, because of lobbyists being incentive to essentially have more dominance over political operators like politicians, they do get, the politics starts to get more close to home over time. And I think that's why we have such intense arguments about abortion and about whatever it is, because it's like they have to, like the news has to one make money off of it, and someone has to be making money to like incentivize these politicians to pay for play and to do something. And like that energy and that game of like what's going to energize the people the most, it's always going to lead to these issues that are so close to home. Like it's
Totally.
and that stuff is worth fighting for. Like that, I'm saying in a debate, but that stuff is worth people like fighting for. But it's like to what you're saying, it shouldn't destroy social life, which is like we're seeing that happen.
I don't know if you know this. Do you know where the origin of the abortion debate comes from?
Uh, like
No, no.
what
What
is
I
it?
mean, what I mean is, abortion was not politicized until the late '70s to the '80s, and the origin of the abortion debate is actually really interesting.
Yeah.
So in the late '60s to '70s, the Tennessee Baptist Church legalized abortion. The Tennessee Baptist Church,
Hmm.
and around that time and there was actually a lot more moderation on all fronts. Part of the reason Roe v. Wade got passed because abortion didn't used to be nearly as politicized. People didn't care about it nearly as much. But around the '70s and the late '70s to the '80s, Republican political strategists got together and they were looking for a reason, looking for a way to attract the base of evangelical Christians. Evangelical Christians were a huge voter base, and they still are, but they were even more of a large voter base in the late '70s and the '80s.
Hmm.
And Republican strategists literally got together and thought, how can we win the evangelical base over? And they thought for weeks, and they strategized for weeks, and they came up with, and someone said, what about abortion? And they said, what do you mean? And they said, well, what if we make abortion we make it a political issue and we really focus on it? And the reason being that evangelical Christians in the 70s, for the most part, were very racist against black people. And at the time, most of the people that were getting abortions, or there's a lot of the abortion debate, was for low income areas, which at the time, and still is to this day, were predominantly black. And so they were able, the Republicans were like, what if we make abortion our stand issue so that the evangelical Christians, we can win them over to our base, but because we can argue that black people are getting abortions, which is abhorrent, and that Republicans stand against abortion and how killing babies, and they made it about killing babies. The reason that they did it was so that they could win over this voter base that had nothing to do with whether or not Republicans actually gave a fuck. They didn't give a fuck about abortion. They wanted to win over a base of people so they could get votes. And the base they picked happened to have a problem with the group of people that were getting the most abortions in certain test states that had the most political instability and were the most divisive, like Georgia and Pennsylvania and Iowa, all the test states that could be flipped, the flip states. And so Republicans chose to politicize abortion and made it this whole thing and won over the evangelical Christian base and made it a position of moral righteousness, and it was predominantly an argument about race. And so it had nothing to do with whether, and then obviously it accelerated over the last 20 or 30 years, but the argument over abortion did not start because Republicans inherently gave a fuck about abortion. They didn't. Republican strategists literally tricked Republicans, modern Republicans, to care about this. And also, not even...
Yeah.
But that's where it came from.
No, I mean, it makes sense. But also, like, whenever there's, like, these topics, they always get to the fact that I always see something as, like I can tell when certain things are engineered because of how it always has to devolve into emotional arguments. And you can always see that it's engineered because that's how the media controls. Like, the controls are like, take highly emotional issues, and then you'll always be able to have the moralistic side win.
Yep.
So you can essentially like know who's gonna like win certain like elections. It's like whoever like does the moralistic thing more than the other side is gonna dominate because it's all about hearts and minds. Like that's really like pathos is for media for like pathos is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's like, can you play a sad song in front of a dying dog? You know,
but if no one cares about illegal immigration, you're not going to win any voters. But if all of a sudden you make illegal immigration about you're saving these poor people coming across the border, all of a sudden you're going to garner the vote of a lot of people who care about believing that they're good people, letting innocents from Latin American countries who are struggling into our country. And again, not taking a stance on that issue, but if you're a strategist looking to win over a large group of people using narrative and story, you're going to pick an issue that you can spin a really strong moral narrative around, whether it's illegal immigration or abortion or anything else.
Yeah, and whenever people are using, because and also this is actually a part of the Protestant, like, American Revolution, where we did become very, like, socially oriented. Well, also it started out in Puritanism, but Americans are super socially, like, when it comes to like what's the word? If someone disagrees, that has like a serious consequence. It's an irony about America that even though we're very free thinking and everyone can kind of disagree, there is like a very, especially when it comes to families and like the family units in a certain town, if someone is out of the bounds of that, there is like it hurts, and it's like a social death. And things like abortion will use that because then, like, all the moralistic people in the town that disagree with you, they're gonna essentially say that you're the bad man. And then we get into Joe Rogan, and I'm not saying we're not talking about abortion or whatever with what he thinks, but it's like people will label him and a lot of people as the bad man by simply being authentic about what they think on things, and it works. And you'll get a man to apologize. You'll get the most powerful man in the world to bend on his knees and apologize and cry because you shamed him because he didn't agree with the narrative. You can do that.
Especially when narrative is, because that's the what all of us fail to realize is that all of us, society is wrapped around narrative. There's
100%.
there's no,
Yeah.
we've invented the rules to this game. We've
Yeah.
invented the good and the bad. And if you look at
Yeah. This
nature,
is, by the way, this is live. BWM. Yeah.
oh yeah, this is live. But I mean, just like look at like if you look at nature, I always look to nature because
Yeah.
whenever when people start to be like, how can you imagine that people are violent, people are murdering each other, there's rape, there's all these terrible things. I'm like, I can imagine. Have you ever seen what a cougar does to another cougar?
Yep.
Have you ever seen what monkeys do to other monkeys?
Yeah.
The animal kingdom is cruel. There's rape, there's genocide, there's murder, there's abandonment
Yeah.
of children. There's every single terrible thing that we see in humanity in nature, and we come from nature. And we like to forget that we came up with all these rules and moral high grounds, and many of them are good for us. Like I don't think you should hurt people. Don't think you should kill people. I think you should be a good person. All that good stuff. But the reality is, laws, society, we invented. So everything is narrative at the end of the day. So if you're shaming someone, if you're getting someone to have to believe a certain thing, remember that all that is a narrative. There's no like if you really think that there's right or wrong or that you have the right way of looking at things, what's right changes every 50 years, changes every 100 years. I guarantee in 100 years from now, what's right from the liberal stance will be completely different than what's right from the liberal stance right now. Same for the Republicans. And why is that? They don't stand for anything. It's a changing of the narrative with the time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a narrative. So that's a part of the social contract thing where it's like we're always consenting to a social contract that's pulling us out. This is all theories, but it's like this is Hobbes, but it's like it's all pulling us out of the state of nature, what you're saying, which is man versus man. Uh, every man has to be essentially a savage that can do anything in his own with his bare hands, pure individual. And if he isn't, then he'll die. If he's more than the other men, then he'll get resources. That's the state of nature. And the only thing pulling us out of that is us consenting to a governing body that has pure dominance. So it's like you could argue with the cops, but like they have pure dominance. It's like what do you want to? And because of that, you have roads and shit, and we consent to that. The narrative. What's interesting though about what you're saying is that I don't know like what actually pulls us out of savagery. And I've been thinking about this because it's like I don't know if it genuinely is the social contract or if it's a choice to appeal to a greater form of what's good. Like if there is an objective good, like which is what I believe personally, that there's this objective good that pulls us out. Like I don't know how strong the social contract is versus the objective good. And I don't know if like better performing societies just appeal to objective good more than others. Or it could just like I don't know. Like that's really like a huge like philosophical thing, but it's like that narrative right now, the thing that's really fucked up, I think, about our society is that we're appealing to a narrative that has nothing to do with our social contract. Like the reason why people are mad at the dinner table is because of special interest groups that want to make money off of you so you can contribute more to some like allegiance to overthrow some fucking government in like Yemen or something like that. Like it's some like nonsense.
Yeah, why does the NRA want your vote so much?
Right.
Because Colton Weston wants you to fucking buy more guns. There's already 2 billion of them around, and they're like, God, if people don't think that guns are necessary, there's already what? 5 guns to every person that lives in the United States, and I'm not anti-gun. My point is like just taking a random group. If you believe that there isn't violence and that we're a peaceful society and that you don't need guns, you're not going to buy guns, which doesn't fund these companies. And there's already
Yeah.
enough guns for every person in the United States. So it's not a helpful narrative for those companies to believe that we are perfectly safe and that there's enough guns. It's You need to think
Yeah.
that someone is going to come fucking climb into your window and murder or rape you in order to buy more guns. That narrative is helpful.
And Maliki says never seen a monkey or never seen monkeys pray, and that's something 100%. I mean, that's something that like I really have been like it's been opening up my mind a lot. Like, why do we worship? And it's like there's a lot of social construct and reasons, but there's some inkling for us to appeal to what's the most true fucking thing in our lives, and I think that's part of why like these media narratives like NRA and all these things like could dominate our lives so easy because it's super easy to you know it's super easy to take true things that are emotionally like it feels right and to co-opt it. I'm not saying the NRA is doing that. I'm just saying it's all narratives. Like it's very easy to co-opt things for special interests. It's super easy to co-opt people's inkling to want to be closer to something true. It's like putting an ad in front of like I don't know like a it's like the fucking Sarah McLachlan thing. It's like there everyone wants to save the fucking little dogs,
Yeah, of course.
but
Do
where's
you,
this money going to?
of course. And I think on the question of like why, humans are the only thing that prey, we know that stories became really important to people tens of thousands of years ago around the campfire, right? Like people started to relay stories because
Mm-hmm.
stories also are patterns that can be repeated, but in stories are information. So through stories, you can relay information that's easier to remember. If I just list facts, it's not very easy to remember. But if I relay something that's tied to both emotion, which humans have, apes have emotion too. And you can actually, you're starting to see, apes have their own, you know, apes, chimpanzees, monkeys, they have very subtle narratives that they tell one another. Not nearly to the extent that humans do, but they have narratives that they do tell one another, whether it's narratives around sex, whether it's narratives around leadership or whatever. Very simple, primitive forms of narrative. But narratives are easier to remember. They're easy to communicate information. So human beings at some point, and this is what I believe, in our evolution became really attached to narrative, likely because it's an easier way to transmit information and to remember information, to remember facts. And it can be passed down from people to people to people. Whether it's like fire hurts you. If you go over to that part of the Serengeti, you get eaten by fucking lions, right? And
Yeah.
that's important information for us to remember. And so stories are an effective tool for that. So perhaps I always think about that. If you believe in evolution, that's where my mind goes. If you don't believe in
Part
evolution,
of
then power to you.
part of where I struggle with the logical endpoint of that is I always think like why is the story of a man's life like why is it so structured across so many different cultures and why is there the forms a part of the narrative like so powerful and potent that it like I think a lot of those things and you could say it's because we all had to evolve that way to survive to like have these different archetypes but I don't know like for instance like flood myth like things like this I'm like how are these things so like part of me feels like the form of who we are and I also think this is a part of why people are very in general very confused in our societies because we're so detached from that like that idea of what is like objective and forms of in our spirituality to some extent. And spirituality is such a fucking it's like it sounds like I'm fucking like this is a cult when I say shit like that. But it's like but like I think we're so detached from that. And the reality it like the more I go down the logical end of that, genuinely the more I'm like, I think we have to be there has to be a design that makes like because it's too like logical like the way in all these you look at like all the philosophers, they all like go down this like same path of like trying to find this same idea of like archetypes and form and how do you, what is this ultimate truth, and it's always like the same, it's always the same shit. Like it's like part of me feels like that narrative that the that we've been like telling each other since we've been developing for thousands of years. I think a lot of, I think we were fucking born with it to some extent.
Yeah.
Like
Listen, you know, it's funny. I would never be. I'm not righteous enough to think that like even the narrative that like we evolved from bacteria that came from a comet that landed on the earth billions of years ago, and somehow evolution ran its course long enough to get to the point where we're conscious and human from bacteria that landed on a comet or whatever else, or it formed from pressure of materials and minerals and heat and sulfur and whatever else was going on when
yeah,
Earth was, you know, still in its early days of volcanic, you know, magma and whatever else. Perhaps we did form from that. Perhaps we formed from something else. Perhaps it was God. It's really hard to say. All of these are narratives, though,
it's
because
all there. Yeah,
we don't know. Like that's my biggest problem with science. I would, you know, whenever science is like, oh, we came from bacteria.
yeah.
Really? You
Well, it's
know?
funny. It's like the more I, because I'll say certain things like this, and I feel like there's always an inkling of like there's the midwits, the redditors. Like I'll confront that truth. There's the people that will say certain things because, and you're kind of like that type of scientist way of thinking of like, oh well, like it's true because it's an accepted theory. Like that argument is always so hilarious to me, and I'm not even like I'm not on a, I don't know enough about these things, but I know the pattern of the like midwit because I've worked with a ton of engineers and scientists, and I just know how that works, and it's like you have to, appealing to authority through consensus will get you fucking killed. Like that's just like that's happened time and time again in society where people they lose that humbleness you need when
Well,
you're exploring.
it'll be good for a while. You know,
Yeah,
you'll get to go along with it for a while until they turn on
100%.
you, right? Like that's the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And the thing
exactly.
is,
No,
and
dude.
it may
Yeah,
not turn on you in your lifetime. So it's easy to give it into that because you might be safe for 100 years, 200 years, but eventually it'll turn on you. And
yeah,
it's like anyone who thinks they're super right about
yeah,
anything, it's like we are always proven wrong. Human
yeah,
beings are always I can there's only one thing I'm certain of, and it's I'm wrong about
yeah,
almost
yeah,
everything. I'm
yeah,
very rarely right. And here's the thing, you're right for a time often. Maybe you're only
yeah.
right for 5 years. The COVID vaccine was right for 6 months to some people, and then people started thinking it was a scam. But for six
Right.
months, they were fully bought in that it was their savior. Some
We're the
people still
bad
think,
man for disagreeing.
and some
That's the
people
way.
still think it was their. Is some people still think that belief? You
Yeah,
know, I choose to subscribe to a more nuanced belief because I think that things are often much more close to the middle and nuance, and reality is more complex than just any binary. But like it's way easier to just believe something because it's easy. It's comforting. Believing
yeah,
something absolutely, like believing in science or faith or God or whatever, is comforting.
yeah.
And life
Also,
is inherently uncomfortable.
100%. And also, like a part of the fucking social contract thing is like we're traumatized at a very young age, and a lot of this is where like not everybody. And I try to like know people that aren't like this, and I feel like you're a good thinker, and like and I know people that are good thinkers, but the vast majority of people have to think no more than two dimensionally about most things in order to function day to day and live in their highly traumatized lives. Like if you have like to fully embrace a job you hate in a life that doesn't make sense, where you're fully detached from ideas of objectivity, to fully embrace that, it's super hard to always confront the truth. And that's why like the authentic speakers on the internet, I feel like it's so fucking important because it's like you get this now. Like you get people like, and yeah, you may not like Joe. Like I, there's a lot of things about Joe Rogan that like I don't really watch anymore. But
Sure.
like he's a fucking authentic dude. Like there's a ton of other authentic people, and like you get that, and like you get to like break those fucking chains, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's like it's the second that you want someone else to stop saying stuff that they believe, you have to ask yourself, why?
Yeah.
Why? Why do
Yeah.
you care what someone else talks about on the internet? Because if you give me the answer that's dangerous, how about our government's dangerous?
Yeah.
Our politicians kill people every day in the pharmaceutical industry, in our legal disputes internally, not even externally, but like how many people are incarcerated for weed crimes, right? How
Yeah.
many people are incarcerated for drug crimes that literally no one would care about or are not harmful to people? How many wars have we been in? How many people have we killed in Afghanistan? But it's those are narratives that we buy into
Yeah.
because they tell us them, and it's easy to just go, let's let them say that this. Let's imagine that there are terrorists. I mean, think about this. Remember in the early 2000s when all you ever used to hear about was how we were going to get fucking killed by terrorists?
Right.
And
Right. Right.
Fox News used to start every day with today's a threat level green. Do you remember that? They used to go on TV and be
Yeah.
like, we're in a fucking threat level like yellow. They used to
Yeah.
do that. How many terrorist attacks have there been on the United States since 9/11?
Well, they could say that they stopped all of them, and that's what they're doing over there.
Of
That's
course they
the
can.
logical argument.
Of course they can. But then you can also go into the fact that there were 50 Al Qaeda terrorists in 2002. And then you go, oh, maybe there were never actually any
Yeah.
terrorists. And then maybe when you actually get the terrorists that are committing crimes and you talk to them and you go, why the fuck are you committing terrorism? You're like,
Yeah.
well, you bombed my village and my dad, my uncle, my brother were killed by a drone strike. So I joined fucking ISIS.
And there's also this idea, like, I think people like, there's a lot of people that just like do things just to get a lot of young guys to fucking fight for them for what their interests. That's just like a thing that fucking happens in history. So it's like learning history is so important. Like people that have money and resource interests in an area will think of a narrative to get young guys riled up to fight for them and die. Happens time and time again. Yeah, and there's like and I feel like at the end of the day, there's whatever's happening when it comes to like the narratives around like or whatever is happening when it comes to being authentic online and all that. I think it's only good, and I think that like we're gonna see a wave of people truly like getting off platform and like being really real, and it doesn't even matter if they're fucking on YouTube or Twitch or Rumble, and we're already kind of seeing it happen. And I think that's fucking. I think we're gonna have a renaissance next 10 years.
Well, because I think all of us crave that. It's like, that's what Joe Rogan gave so many people. Is in an era where media is full of people who will say whatever to whoever's the best buyer, whether it's a pharmaceutical company or their boss or whatever else. Whoever is paying their bills, they'll say whatever those people want them to say, and they'll change their
Yeah,
opinion. But when you have someone who's not doing that, who's only doing that based off of what they think, even if they think shit that's fucking dumb, you're like, well, at least they're changing their own mind. Someone's
yeah,
not
yeah.
paying them to change their mind. And that's what's attractive.
Inside your mom, dude. But yeah, whoa. What do you think about like what do you think about this idea of like disintermediation? Um, Pretty much what's happening now is we're just killing out middlemen. The more we build out technology, fuck YouTube did it. Like the more we do this, the more we just kill out more and more and more middlemen. What do you think that's going to do to Hollywood?
Dude, Hollywood's already dying.
Yeah,
Hollywood's dying because they're not making authentic content that people like, you know?
yeah.
When was the last time you saw a movie that had like a nuanced perspective or had a character that was likable but also a dick?
The last
You
time we
rem-
saw a movie,
That's a good point. But dude, do you remember like all those movies? You remember the movies growing up where you would see a character who was like, let's crazy example, who like beat their kids but like was like a good detective, you
right,
know?
right, right, yeah,
Just like such a simple basic narrative, like a shitty dad but like honorable to the law and like saved
yeah, yeah.
people and fought criminals because
That
that's real.
yeah, that
That
level of nuance, like people can't handle that
no.
because yeah, it's like oh, but he's the bad. It's what I'm saying. It's the fucking two dimensional thinking. And by
Yeah,
the way,
I
you can't problem solve if you think two dimensional
no.
or one dimensionally, obviously. But like if you can only think in binaries, you literally can't problem solve.
Dude, of course. It's like everything is far more nuanced than whatever bullshit that
Yeah,
that some organization or some person is trying to tell you. It's like things are
yeah.
obviously like, let's even take abortion. Abortion's a nasty thing. It's not nice, obviously. Inherently, it's not a good thing. But there are definitely instances in which like there are people's lives, like a young girl's life will be ruined, whether it's she's a product of rape or just bad circumstances or lack of fertility medication, whatever it is. Things are nuanced. Life is ugly. But it's like the second you take it like it's a fully good or bad thing, it's like you've now decided to look at this thing through a
Well,
completely one-dimensional lens, and that's just,
yeah,
and it's a very touchy subject for people, but it's
but
like
I'll push it even further here because this is where I think the it always gets this, and this is where the moralistic arguments they dominate our society. Watch what I'm gonna do here. Okay, this is what we got to do in our day and age. So abortion is murder. It literally is. Now, if someone can consent to that idea, then consenting to that idea, making the argument for abortion for X amount of reasons, consenting to the idea, it's murder to do that. So now, in the special case scenarios you're making, now we have to make it's like, do we do a murder to stop a murder? For instance, in a situation where it's like she might die if the baby comes out.
sure.
It's like, do we do a murder to stop the murder? It's like that's like an actual argument. But the problem with the moralistic discussions is that we can't have actual arguments because people are reactionary and a lot of people can't consent to whether like we can't agree on the given, which is like how you get into like society's just getting destroyed because no one can do if then statements. It's like we can't do the given, which is abortion is murder, because a lot of people have emotional reactions to that. So we can't actually have arguments about it. That's it.
Totally.
like that's the whole problem with it, right?
Totally. And to the same thing of like, there's a lot of starving people in America that we don't provide food to. And when we don't do that, tens of
Right.
thousands of people in America die every year from starvation. Isn't that a crazy stat?
Yeah,
Tens of
yeah,
thousands of people in America die every year from starvation. Tens
yeah,
of thousands of like living adult, like children, adults die of starvation. And
yeah,
that's a problem that we easily ignore. And us not feeding them is murder.
yeah. And and
That's us not killing them. That's us killing them.
but we can't deal with the results of our. It's like if you can't do givens and you can't make definitions, you can't like agree on things to like because whenever you do a proof, you have to have things that are defined first. Yeah, exactly. We send over 1 billion to a war. It's insane. And yeah, you can't solve problems in a three-dimensional world with two dimensions. So here's really another thing. It's like with the two-dimensional idea, it's like the way you test how someone thinks is when you're arguing how do they react to saying something where it's like, and I'm not I'm making it about politics to just be effective here, but this you could do this with anything. Let's say I say, okay, I think there's bad people on the left and on the right. I think there's a significant portion of people on the left and the right that are bad people. But I think that there's a significant difference between the amount of bad people on the left and on the bad people on the right. By the way, I'm not even this isn't my opinion. This is a that it's like, can someone actually think that way? It's like, so I think there's a significant difference between two things, and I also think that variable is significant on both sides. Most people literally can't think that way, or else they think you're the bad man.
Hmm.
It's like so I okay, it's like yeah, I think that like a significant number would be like let's say over 10%, maybe over 10% of people. I'll say something less like controversial. It's like maybe it's like people that are like between the cops and and gang members. I think that there's like 10%, like at least 10% of them on both sides are evil, but there's this, and that's significant, and maybe that should be addressed, but also maybe there's like 50% that are evil on one side and 20% that are evil on the other side. So that 30% difference is also significant. See, now that's a multi-dimensional issue. It's not just one good, one bad. It's now we have significance as a dimension, and we have the delta of that as a dimension. And it's like if you can't think that way, don't be president. You know what I mean?
I mean, well, good news. No one that's president has thought that way in the last 15 years. So, you
Well,
know.
I was talking to my brother about this. It's like you look at all the past presidents, like when was the last one that was like generally like a normal person?
That was a president that was a normal person.
That didn't have like bodies, because don't say Obama. Like, when was the last? Like, definitely not Bill Clinton.
No, definitely not the Clintons. I'll even say that. Yeah, there's no argument there. And by the
Like,
way, please don't kill me. Please.
I don't know. Like, I mean, they don't care about us until
No,
we
of
get
course not.
until I invest in whatever they're invested in, and
Yeah, but
I
like, so all right. So let's do this thought experiment. When was the last president without bodies
oh, without bodies, I don't think that may not have ever been a thing.
ever existed? Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna.
Carter. Yeah, he was like a normal guy.
Yeah, Carter and Ford kind of didn't really do much. They were just kind of
Yeah,
like, yeah, we gotta save people, and then they didn't do anything. Then they were kind of like useless.
Carter was so normal, he was like ineffective. He was
Yeah,
like
but he wasn't.
such a normal guy. He
And it was
wasn't even.
funny because his presidency would make you think he was dumb, but if you actually listened to him, he did not
Oh,
sound dumb,
dude,
even
he's
remotely.
smart. He's a smart fucking guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a smart, normal guy. He just wasn't a very effective president. But also, I'm not sure I would be a very effective president, in fairness.
I don't think. I think the role of president it's a chess piece. It has a position, and it's like who's moving the piece.
You know, I had this thought once about the people like Carter, where it was like maybe the presidents that are the least effective are just the people that are the least likely to give in to any political ideology.
Yeah.
You know, they're just the most like every time they get in a room and someone's like, "All right, Mr. President, the Republicans really want you to do this thing," and they're like, "Well, listen, Joe, I just don't think that's very fair. We've got 50% of the population that are Democrats. Can't we have a Democrat in the room?" And they're like, and then nothing gets done because he's
Yeah.
constantly trying to be like, "Well, we got to try and find a compromise here that's going to work for everyone." And there's like, "Mr. President, that's not how it works. We can't compromise. We have to just do whatever."
Yeah.
Whoever party position wins, that's who wins. That's how this works, Mr. President.
Yeah. Like that's funny. Like the idea that's like any normal guy would be a shitty president. Like you'd
Of
have to
course.
be a psychopath to do it well. You're like,
Yeah,
oh
because
yeah,
you'd
we
be
should just
like,
kill him.
all right, sir, we're gonna have to. The Republicans are on, and be like, well, listen, I'm no Democrat, but I've got a bunch of Democratic friends who I think we should call. They've got some good ideas, and like, Mr. President, that's not how it works.
He's too empathetic. Let's
All
go.
right, he's got a nuanced opinion. He wants to hear both sides. Someone take him out, and then you get another Kennedy
Yeah.
on your hand, and then you all of a sudden,
Yeah. Yeah, that might have been what happened with Kennedy. Is they're like he's being too reasonable.
yeah.
No, like, and I'm not like,
Well, no. What happened with Kennedy? He was like, "Hey, we got to defund the CIA," and then,
yeah. No, I was like freaking out about that in like 2018. I was like looking all into JFK, and now everyone like, I mean, I know back then a lot of people kind of knew, but I was like, oh shit, this like didn't like he was like killed by either like the CIA or I thought it was either the mafia or the CIA, and it
could
seems
be the
like
Cubans, but probably not likely. They probably would have claimed credit over it. That's like that would be their
yeah,
greatest accomplishment of all time. If you're Cuba
yeah,
and you don't take credit for killing JFK, what the fuck are you doing?
yeah, and hey, what's up, Vamp? And I feel like there's this idea that like people like Cuba, okay, like Fidel Castro, people always think that these like leaders are like also in on some group, Dude, I don't think Fidel Castro was in on any secret deep state anything. I think he was.
He wished he would have been.
Oh, 100%. I think he was like acting on his own, and he was fucking crazy, and no one knew what he was gonna do. Genuinely.
The only thing that he was the only thing, in fairness, Fidel was not a dumb guy.
No.
I went, I spent some time in Cuba in May, and
Dude,
getting
he
to
did it. Him and the boys took over.
They came on a boy. Dude, we need to talk about the Cuba scheme sometime, because that is one of the craziest schemes of all time. Nuts. Let me go get 83 of my buddies and boat over and take over a country. And then also start political rivalry with the largest and most powerful organization, the United States, in the world.
Yeah, and like against the people that had all the money, like the fruit company and shit. Like it was like crazy. Like that was. And I don't. Yeah, politics aside, I'm not obviously the politics are like. I don't particularly agree, but it's like, dude, that's nuts to get that done. If he's a lawyer, he was just a lawyer that liked baseball. And then he fucking takes over a country. That's nuts.
Dude, that was such a wild scheme.
Dude, and he was like 30 or like 28 or something.
I mean, he lived
even like 40
Dude, he ruled for like 55, 60 years. Yeah. He died at like 94 or something. The dude was as old as time.
Dude, he fucked Trudeau's wife. Yeah, he made Justin. Yeah, what do you think about that whole thing?
What?
You know about. Oh, you don't know? Oh, look up pictures of Justin Trudeau next to Fidel Castro.
Stop.
Dude, they're like, it's his dad. I'm just gonna make that. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but I'm not lying. No, like, it has to be his. Like, and also there's this whole thing where it's like he knew the mom and all this stuff. Justin does not look like his biological dad. That's just a reality. Like
I will say, I'm give you some credit here. I'm not sure I believe it, but it is fun.
Oh, no, it's very fun.
It's very fun. That's the problem with all these things when people. It's just fun. It's way more fun to think aliens are here. It's way more fun to think that Trudeau's mom fucked Fidel Castro. That's way more fun.
Yeah, and also it's like it used to be like you could just have little conspiracies, and then like there's just some like after work, you and all the guys are just talking about bullshit, and one dude always thinks conspiracies. Now it's like people will be like, oh, this guy's speaking the law, and like now he's like a lunatic or whatever. Like now, like everything you say has so much like it is like it's like you're representing something whenever you say anything now. It's partially to do with like fucking Twitter.
Well, yeah, when it used to be that you would say stuff and all that would happen is you would say it to a bunch of other idiots.
Yeah.
The only evidence was 5 other fucking dumbasses, And now it's like, dude, what's the evidence that I said that? There's actually a video of you on TikTok. It's got 8 million views. It's trending. And YouTube, there's a viral video.
Yeah.
And there's also a hashtag on Twitter saying, cancel Jack. So, yeah, there's about 15 million people behind this one.
Dude, speaking of what do you think about cancel culture? With all this stuff, like there's all the allegations that happen, what do you think about all this stuff?
I think everyone thinks that it's pretty dumb. Like, obviously,
not everyone, but yeah.
Well, no, obviously not everyone, but I think actually the majority of people that you mean, like most people are not fully behind cancel culture. I think most people are behind not liking rapists, not liking criminals,
100%.
Not liking liars. We all like this. But the other sad reality that we all have to deal with is that there are a lot of people in our life that do terrible things that we still love and we still respect. And there's a lot of people that are in power that have done horrible things that we let get away with, that have done way worse things than some actor who sent some terrible text or grabbed someone's ass or did something even worse. And all that doesn't excuse the behavior. But it's like, what the problem with cancel culture is that unless you're actually doing the same thing for everyone, which we're not and we're never going to, not everyone gets the same level of punishment. There's an arbitrary decision about who gets punished to a certain extreme. Unless you and I'm not even saying you should do this. I think that cancel culture is dumb. But unless you punish people to the exact same for the same crime across all extents, you lose trust with people eventually. So cancel culture is inherently dumb because no one has trust in it, because some dude who like sends a dick pic and some shitty text message is punished more than some guy who murdered 5 people. And then it's like, why aren't we canceling the guy who murdered 5 people? Why don't we cancel Obama for drone striking people? Like, you know, we have to have levels of punishment if we're going to do this whole cancel culture shit.
And this is something that, gotta say it, and it's something that it's super, I think it's really important for our society to fully understand. It's something we truly know in the private. I think for most people, especially men, are aware of this in the private. But we gotta just like this is needs to be said publicly. People make shit up to destroy people all the time, and people make shit up to get attention. And allegations aren't just the truth. And and I'm not saying that I'm not actually talking about anything specific. I'm sure some whatever specific things someone thinks when they hear that, maybe it's true. I don't know. But like tons of people, like you see it time and time again. Someone gets famous and then some girl that like fucked that guy years ago will all of a sudden like change your mind about what happened. That's a reality thing that happens. But also like it's a multidimensional thinking. That can be true. And also some people that have a proclivity for being celebrities and rock stars can also, be not very good with women as well.
Oh, really? You're telling me that if you make $8 million a year, everyone thinks you're the coolest person in America. You're not going to think you can get away with some heinous behavior.
But also, tons of girls will want to fuck the guy at the same time.
Of course.
But what you're saying is true, but the other component's true.
Of course, everything's true.
Multidimensional, yeah.
Everything's true. It's a nuanced topic. And I always got this nuanced perspective from my mother, who's a sexual harassment attorney, who also was a sexual harassment attorney on Wall Street in the 80s as a woman. So she was literally the only female lawyer at her firm. And she has horror stories. The guy who was the president of Lehman Brothers tried to rape my mother in the back of a fucking taxi cab. Yeah. 5 years later, he became the president of Lehman Brothers.
Dude, whoa, that's fucking crazy.
It's crazy. But also, my mom represented a number of men who were who women lied about to try and take out. And my mom remembered, she has a number of stories about, these cases where the people lied. That happens both happen all the time.
Both happen. Can people just accept that both happen?
And it's terrible.
Some guys do terrible things and some girls do terrible things.
Totally. But also, the thing with the 80s and this is all just an overcorrection, right? Because the reality was like in the workplace, men, especially without the internet and all sorts of things, men were able to get away with much more sexually aggressive behavior. Yeah. Like even in my mom's law firm, they just had, fucking porn on everyone's desks. That was on, everyone had porn out in public, My mom was once disposing a guy, like literally interviewing a guy who had allegedly raped someone at their office. Yeah. And in the middle of the meeting where she's disposing him, like interviewing him for the allegations against him, he started jerking off under the desk in front of her.
Really?
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
And my mom was like, "You're going to jail." Like I'm going, and she put him away. But like that's the kind of behavior that dudes thought they could get away with back then because dudes are fucked. There's a equal amount of dudes who are fucked up now than then, but it was way easier to get away with shit back then. So more guys did heinous shit, and there was less avenues for women to come forward with shit. Yeah. That's just true.
And it's good not to be super dogmatic about either side. Like it's like you can't take sides with like the truth and the law. That's a reality. It's like what you're saying, all that shit's true. It's like and she's also it's like defended people that like are apparently knew of cases where women lied as well. It's like both are true. It's like the world's fucking dirty. Like the world's fucked up, and there's guys that'll do fucked up things, and it's like, and some people, I know some people would react to that and be like, oh, but like all the fucking girls suck. And then I know that there's some
Of
girl that'll
course.
react to that and be like, oh no, girls would never lie. And it's like, you're both retarded. Like, obviously, the
Yes.
world's like
Of course.
like we're saying, it's state of nature. The world is like, it really can get dark. It can get super dark, especially when
Yeah.
we talk about the law.
Totally. So it's like you hear you know you have to like look at a objectivity and be like, yeah, but
100%.
there's just and it's like, oh man, what's so I mean, even now with the Me Too movement, I would know girls who would, be super feminist and pro cancel culture, and I would be like, your boyfriend is a demon. Like the shit that I know that some of these dudes that I knew would girls would had were dating in college, and you'd be like, these are reprehensible dudes who you're dating and sleeping with, and they're far worse than whoever you're angry at right now.
Yeah.
You know, and you're sleeping next to him, ignoring that reality. Everyone
Yeah.
ignores reality in every regard, just like people ignore reality and want to go, yeah, women lie completely, or yeah, men don't, or men are all pigs. It's like both are insane.
Yeah. It's also good to like knowing those things. Like when things come out, when allegations come out, it's always super good to like just look at the whole situation objectively and be like, okay, what was actually happening here? Like, because you could look at something like there's certain situations I'll see from a celebrity and I'll be like, okay, that guy, based on like sometimes there is when there's smoke, there's fire things, but also there's sometimes where I'm like, well, clearly they're just like they're just out to get this guy, and it's like I can't just like say for every single situation it's one thing. It's like you have to look at everything
Well,
for
it
what.
goes
And that,
back
yeah,
to our legal system. Like, why was America set up? Remember the old statement of that, like, I would rather see 10 guilty men walk free than one innocent man
yeah,
go to jail. Because the whole point is, like, for all of time, we had, governments that would just throw you in jail for shit that you did not do, because there was no process and procedure for proving innocent until proven guilty. But with the advent of social media, it's much easier to jump to social judgment, even when there's no physical hard evidence. The court of
yeah,
law would not pass something, but the court of public opinion would jump on it immediately and go, bad person, rapist,
yeah,
whatever, even though there's no hard evidence. And unfortunately, there's also going to be times where men who are terrible and are rapists, there's no hard evidence that they are. So they
right.
legally, from our judicial system, which I believe is a good thing, our judicial system, would let these men go free. So what do you do about that? It's just a hard thing for people to grasp, and I understand that. But like,
Yeah, and in
do you
general,
really?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like this whole like social media as like the like being the town square, or people using social media to like try to kill people. I think a lot of it's to do with this generation, like our generation. Like a lot of people really want to fucking be somebody, and they want to be special. And then you know who's really special? Someone that fucking takes down that fucking rich or famous dude or whatever. And also there's the other aspect of like, yeah, like some people want to like, especially like we almost have this like on the flip side of it, we almost have this like rock starry type like admiration for people with fame where they'll get away with anything. So it's like I think a lot. I think the less we like play into like the culture of like trying to fucking tear people down or whatever that is, I think we could get something better. Honestly, it's just about confronting the truth. It's really what it
Totally.
is. Just
And
that,
that's
just
and
confronting the truth.
totally. And the whole thing of like good people will be good and bad people will be bad. Good people do terrible things too.
What is a good person? You know?
Exactly. That's my point. It's like people are nuanced. People do shit that's terrible just because they're having a bad day, or their wife
Yeah,
broke their girlfriend broke up with them, or their mom was mean to them, so they do something really mean and terrible. That in that
yeah,
singular moment you'd go, that guy's a dick. And then the next day, he's at a soup kitchen, donates all of his money to charity, and helps a grandma out of her bed and walks her across the street. People are
Yeah.
nuanced. That's just what it
That's
is.
why, for as a man, it's so important. Like, know thyself is so important, and like doing that, like, and for everybody. But I'm just saying because we're guys, so I'm trying to speak, but from our point of view. But it's like you have to know, especially when you have wrath and you have a lot of aggression, or if you have a lot of lust or whatever it is, like you have to fucking know your lines, know who you are. There's dudes on death row that are genuinely good people. Like that's a reality to our world. There's dudes
Totally.
that have killed people in a fit of rage that they fucked up. And you may not have you may be a day from fucking up. And I'm not saying that like it's like more good dudes percentage wise on death row than
Of
like
course.
on average, but I'm just saying there are some, and it's like there's like moments where people will do like fucked up shit. This whole like moralizing on who a man is and all this stuff, it's all media. Media does that to make a narrative so they can tell a story. Reality
Dude,
is like it's so new, it's really nuanced.
dude, our judicial system makes a narrative. Think about
Yeah, yeah.
how many. I mean, have you heard? The Innocence Project?
The innocent? No, no.
The Innocence Project is a group of lawyers who got together and started going back and looking at cases of men on death row and using DNA evidence to prove that they're innocent. And
Yeah,
a gigantic swath of people who are either are convicted to life in prison or death row or whatever were convicted for crimes oftentimes because they were black in the South. And it turns out that there was a heinous crime, and the cops and the prosecutor at the time needed to put someone behind bars, and there was a guy on the street who
right,
was there, and they put him away. And it's like, but then the narrative becomes he's a bad guy, he's a criminal, it floods in the news, and
right,
then
right.
everyone decides, well, you know what, we got to convict him because there's all this news behind it. That's also
Yeah,
true. And there's lots of people who are murderers and rapists who've walked free because there wasn't enough evidence to convict them, or they had a good lawyer, or they had people just spin a narrative. And it's like,
yeah,
that's just all. That reality is ugly, and it's
yeah,
really offensive to people because it just changes their perception of society. And it's hard to live in nuance is scary, and it's really
yeah.
hard to deal with if you don't have
And
if you haven't dealt with your own internal battles yourself. So it's
right.
like all of us have to become more emotionally evolved, self-aware, and really work on ourselves so that we can fully grasp and understand nuance because it's out there. I assure you.
Yeah, and Van makes a good point here where a lot of outrage culture is astroturfed on like in Twitter and stuff like that. That's totally true. You don't think these like you see how fucking dude I did it in like what 4 hours like making some of these bots. You don't think that some of these like political agents are like hey let's like destroy this guy and just like make a ton of bots just fucking like say especially with LLMs like say a ton of shit against somebody. You don't think that someone who, especially if you have, that's why, dude, stay away from crime. Stay
Of
away from
course.
criminal people because the more you're in that world, the more dirt you have on you, people will fucking use that. Like, decrease your attack vector. Like, and be super honest about your life. Like, don't fucking, like, play games where you're like, also, you'll just be super stressed all the time. There's nothing cool about being a fucking criminal. Like, there's nothing like, there's a, everyone always has the friends that are like they think they're about that life and they're trying to be tough. Dude, that's so people will fucking kill you and they'll use everything you did against you and they'll be like it's so funny. Kanye said something recently where part of the reason why he says a lot of this stuff and you can do what you want about him, but I think I like the fact that he's authentic. Okay, I'm not. Hey, I have to be objective. Like he's fucking. He's a yeah. College dropout in the background. Like he's not fucking lying with what he's saying. Like you know what I mean. But like he said like part of the reason why like a lot of these other rappers they think all the same shit he's saying, but it's like they get Jay Z to say something, and they get these people because the reality is Kanye, he was the bitch in the pink polo. You know, like he wasn't a criminal. He did genuinely wasn't a part of crime, and that's part of why he gets to fucking be authentic like that. You know, because people will fucking use shit against you.
Because there's not shit in his closet. He didn't do anything necessarily
Exactly.
criminally wrong.
And I don't know. I'm just saying that's what he said, but it's like it's a good point.
It's interesting. It's certainly interesting. And yeah, don't do crime. Be an honest person. I mean, it's really shouldn't be that hard to. Shouldn't have to
Yeah,
say it. It shouldn't be two jabronis on the internet telling you not to go commit a crime. But the reality with this, like,
yeah,
if you're getting to your point, getting caught up in it is like, if people are willing, everyone's selfish at the end of the day. And I know very few people who aren't mostly self-interested. And I
yeah,
also know very few people who aren't willing to dip their morals for money. But
yeah,
most people are not willing to commit crimes, which protects us. So when you're operating in a group of people who are willing to commit crimes, then they're going to be willing to kill you, like
yeah. There's no honor amongst
because
thieves
the only thing
ever.
protecting us most of the time is that most people don't want to commit crimes. Genuinely. That's the reason
Yeah,
that laws in society are so sweet, is because when all of us are like, you know what? I fucking hate that guy, Jared. They're thinking to themselves, well, what am I going to do? I can't kill him. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
If I do anything to hurt him, it's a crime and I could go, something could happen to me. But if someone's willing to break crimes, they're not subscribing to those protections, there's no trust you can put into them.
And also, like, like if you have friends, someone in the chat was like talking about. It's funny. There was actually a funny conversation. They were like trolling a bit, and I was just kind of like, I was like, hey, do you need anything? Like, I was like, kind of like, I was like, hey, you sound like you're in trouble, and they genuinely were like, yeah, I actually like need some advice in life, and we talked for like 10 minutes, and their situation is they were like, and they seemed cool because like they were really trying to get into coding, but their friends like were like, oh, dude, like let's not get into that, and their friends are like criminal adjacent, and like they saw as they get they're in high school, their friends getting into crime or puberty age, things start changing, they're probably in a poor area, and the best thing I could say
Remember,
is like,
men are idiots and make impulsive decisions. Your brains don't develop until 25 at a minimum,
yeah,
and men have testosterone flowing through their veins, which reduces anxiety, which means that they're more likely to commit crimes because they think, especially when they're young and don't understand consequences. So if you're a young man about to do something
yeah.
criminal, remember, you're a dumb young guy. So am I, and so
Well,
am Jared.
but it's also like some people genuinely don't have a lot of agency when it comes to their social groups, and it's super important, especially if you've like grown up with people. Like once you get to a point where like you guys are fucking in past puberty, these aren't really the same guys you knew when you were like 6, and you might
Yeah.
have that idealized thing. Dudes change, and
Yeah.
often the brotherhood, it's good to keep those bonds, but like if you see a lot of bad behavior, it's super easy to get caught up in that, and you'll probably be the one going to jail and getting killed. That's the
Yeah.
reality of that. It's
At the
because
end of the
you're
day,
nice.
and
Like,
use logic so that you can assess people and go, if their
yeah,
behavior is criminal and not nice, then distance yourself. Behavior, actions speak louder than words. So if their actions
yeah,
are not good, then whatever narrative you have in your head about them being a good guy, just don't hang out with them. Simple
yeah.
as that. Don't hang
It's
out with
not
people
like
who do bad
those high
things.
school years are not what you think it is. It's like your life's going to change drastically soon, no matter what. And you don't want to, if you're the nice one and you don't know if you should still hang out with these people, you're going to be the one fucking getting fucked up and in prison. Like that's what I like. You're the nice one, and it's going to be a worse situation for you.
Yeah, go find a bunch of winners to hang out with. Don't hang out with losers.
Yeah. Oh, it's conflating being based with being attention seeking based. Yeah, but next by idea, AstroTurf Hunter. Yeah, yeah, yeah. AstroTurf Hunter is a good fucking bot. Yeah, yeah.
Dude,
Yeah. Other thoughts about authenticity and authenticity?
dude, authenticity is the way to go. It sells you. Be authentic. Figure out what you really want in life. Figure out who you really are and live that reality. Don't be offended by other
Yeah,
people's realities. Everyone else's reality is fine. If someone's
yeah.
not hurting you, what's the problem?
And dude, like, I think, and part of it why I think it's so important to like be honest in public, and that's why partially why I'm trying to like make content is that like th- really becoming a man. I'm really trying to figure out like what that journey is, and a lot of it is like your ability to confront truth more than has happened in your fucking lineage. It's like your ability to confront truth is so important, and whenever you like, a lot of people that you lose confidence over the years and like get weaker and you don't know why and all that. And I think a lot of it is just because you fucking lie too much and it's eating at you because you can't. People can't live with lies. So it's like if you're not gonna be authentic, what the fuck are you doing? You're wasting your time.
I've said this for a while now, and I'll say it again. You can get away with lying to anyone but yourself. If you're
Yeah,
lying to yourself about, you know, I know every time I lie to someone. I know every time that I say something that I don't really believe. I know
yeah,
every time I say something that and that's okay. We all do it. It's a very human experience. But at the very least you should know when you do it. And just keep a
yeah,
little mental note. Make a little asterisk next to that. Hey, when I people ask me, what my interests are, I'm not fully honest. Just think about
yeah.
that. And you can chip away and what I this is what I do is I every day I try and be a little bit more authentic to myself than the day before. Some days I fall
Like
back, but I make steps every single day, and I only am able to make steps because I know when I'm not being authentic. I know when I lie.
100%.
But if you know when you lie to other people, you can always get better and you can always improve. It's when you lie to yourself that you're really fucked, and then you need to go talk to a psychologist or talk to your mom or whomever else will actually help you figure out why you're lying to your internal truth.
Oh, Vamp says we got to clip the last part. Should be a preview of the show. Maybe. I think. I don't know. What do you think, Jack?
I like it. Be authentic.
Be authentic. Don't fucking lie. It's the lies get you killed. All right,
Seriously.
guys. This is a good one. Any final thoughts?
Late night pod. That was fun. I appreciate
Late
everyone
night
showing
pod.
up.
We're gonna. I want. I next time we're gonna be memeing a little bit. Maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe we'll do another react. Maybe we'll react to something that's a little less. Maybe something that's a little more light. Like I don't know. What's the funny thing to react to?
Dude, dude, this is crazy. My reaction video got 215 views already. It got 10 comments that I haven't seen.
What?
Dude,
That's crazy.
100%. I got a bunch
Let's
of
do it.
people. I just got someone's algorithm brought me here. Now I feel obliged to watch. It's a good take as
Nice.
well. Dude, fuck yeah. Look at
Nice.
that,
Which
boys.
which clip is that?
That's the Lex Friedman fucking wants to talk to dead people clip.
Yeah. Oh
It
yeah, we
had
didn't talk
literally
about the
it
tech.
had 10 views before this.
Dude, tight. The
Boys,
algorithm's
this is why
working.
you got to be authentic. Look at that.
Algorithm's working for you.
Fuck
All
yeah.
right.
Dude, I'm pumped.
Let's go.
All
Oh
right,
yeah,
everyone.
guys. Like, subscribe to if you're on. Subscribe to Jack. His link should be in the description. Uh, subscribe to Schemeology. We're gonna be posting a ton of clips there. Yeah. All right. See ya.